thank you very much for your presentation. And at this point, I would like to thank all our speakers for their contributions and presentations. There have been a few questions logged into the boxes, and I have probably tried to answer very quickly some of them, but it's an opportunity for us to discuss them further. I don't know if Deepak, you are also available. Maybe you can support me with particular answers. I'll start with the first question that I see on the list. Chris, this is for you. You use the term homeostatic resilience a lot in the first minutes of your presentation. Can you provide a layperson expression for this, please? You might be muted, Chris.
Thanks. Thanks, Theo. Homeostatic resilience is essentially the state that we're in when we're young, when we're fit. So we're able to maintain our systems biochemically, physiologically. And essentially frailty is when that fails. And we tend to look at homeostatic responses rather than the age of a person. And critically, having intact homeostasis is critical to the predictability of how you will respond to medication. If you effectively are maintaining your systems well, you're fit, you're mobile, then single disease targets for blood pressure, for many other agents for bringing your cholesterol down are appropriate and evidence-based. But as your homeostatic mechanisms fail, that evidence base no longer really pertains. And so I think it's a very useful way of thinking about the patient that you're seeing in front of you. You know, what's their physiology like? How are they likely to respond to an antihypertensive? How are they likely to respond to treatments? And again, having proper homeostatic resilience and your homeostasis is as it were normal, means that the target for therapy is normal reversibility of whatever problem you're dealing with. So, however, if you have a chronic disease, then actually much of that reversibility is lost. And so the clinical target may be a compromise. It's really designed to increase the patient's quality of life and is no longer aimed at restoring them to normal function. And so I think it's a useful concept that gets rid of the issues about age and those sorts of problems, and also brings into the fact that as you develop multiple comorbidities and you develop more chronic disease, your physiological reserve is just disappearing. And that has to be taken into account with any therapeutic maneuver. Is that helpful or is that too technical?
Thank you, Chris, for that. The next common question was the relationship of C3-Cloud to GDPR, what we have done in terms of our achievements, our actions. There will be a discussion.
Yeah, do you mind if I just suggest to you that there were a couple of questions that came in that were posted about things that are actually due to be discussed later in the day. Yes. One was about the pilot site experiences, and one was about data protection. Since we're going to cover them later today, I'm going to suggest, if it's all right with you, that we actually jump to a different question, which takes my interest, actually posed also by Diane. Will the process and methods...
On that one, I would like to just simply say that in addition to the discussion we have later on, C3-Cloud, of course, as a research project, was then non-certificated clinical information system, but in the future as a product, it is going to be treated as a clinical information system. So in addition to GDPR, we have clinical information governance aspects, which we will discuss later. So Deepak, would you like to take that next question?
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to answer it. I was going to just ask it. Diane put the question about the clinical reference group. Chris, you described the process of going through the guidelines and working out how to create a suitable set of multimorbidity rules, taking into account frailty. The methods that we used, which were clearly undertaken through the 4 guidelines in progress, you've learned a lot from that. Will there be some place where those methods are made available to other communities that want to do a similar thing with different guidelines in the future? I'm elaborating a bit on Diane's comment, but I know it's a comment I've received from people in the past in other events when C3-Cloud was presenting. What's the potential reusability of your learning?
I think enormous. I think reconciling guidelines, particularly with treatments around inflammatory disease and other chronic conditions, can be done in a sense. I'm slightly contradicting myself now in terms of organ by organ, and so the method, I think, here has general applicability. The issue as well is that you have to make some assumptions, and you use expert opinion. We used consensus statements and a variety of evidence bases to come up with the rules. But again, in the end, the only way that, so you'll derive an instrument that then you can use the C3 data going forward to test its applicability and its value. So I think there's 2 components to that really. Like, one is the method we used in reconciling those single disease guidelines, and then secondly is how you would evaluate it going forward. And so I think the system we used is robust and can be applied to any guidelines. And in fact, I think going forward with C3-Cloud, the reconciliation of these guidelines and having a library of reconciled guidelines is something that is like the 3rd revolution really in clinical progress. So we need to build on our single disease approach to multiple comorbidities in single patients. And this is the only way that you can make a start on it, really. Thanks.
And I think, Deepak, the other question, which relates probably to the evaluation and of how we managed to document, our clinical guidelines and benefits, and how healthcare professionals have reacted. You will see how the system works in the demo. The process of developing and implementing this as part of the development of the process was a long one, as Chris described very nicely. I think, Chris, you explained very clearly the benefits from a clinical point of view, and we will see what are the benefits from a patient's point of view on how they see these guidelines being translated to specific goals into the patient empowerment platform when my colleague Pontus will do a demonstration and later on discuss it. In terms of their reactions, I'm going to give a quick anecdotal strap line that we had positive reactions on the power of such an availability of information and advice be given. But you will see also in the results that the reactions during our trials, which happened unfortunately in the middle of the pandemic, might not have been as positive because both clinicians and patients were preoccupied with other everyday stresses, especially our clinicians. However, they had the opportunity to give us good feedback, and I think this will be covered on the last session by Malte.